Good evening, Bruins. My name is Angela Scales, and I serve as a Senior Director of Bruin Connections here at the UCLA Alumni Association. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 9th episode in our YouTube live series, Bruin Career Insights. Tonight, we'll be exploring the myth of work-life balance and how you can find your own equilibrium. By now, hopefully you've heard about UCLA One, a great resource to connect with fellow Bruins and to take the next step in your career. We now have over 20,000 Bruins on the platform, in addition to job postings and professional groups for networking. It's easy to connect, so join UCLA One today and find your next opportunity. We want to be able to make these events customized to your interests. So in order to do that, we need your feedback and suggestions for upcoming topics. Send us an email at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu. Tonight's episode is powered by membership, so I want to take a moment to thank our Blue, Gold, and Life members. You make events like this possible for the entire UCLA community. If you're interested in upgrading your membership, you'll see a link in the live chat function. Our special guest tonight is Crystal Schaffer. Crystal is a proud member of the UCLA Parents Council and mom to a Bruin who is in his junior year majoring in molecular cell and developmental biology. She is owner and president of New You Consulting, a New Jersey-based learning company she founded in 2007. Her business serves a diverse range of clients in America and Europe, including the U.S. Navy and entrepreneurial startups. Crystal is also a moderator for Harvard Business School Publishing, where she has developed and facilitated multinational blended leadership development programs for Fortune 500 companies since 2011. She's an experienced talent management expert, specializing in leadership, strategy, organizational development, and team and individual training and coaching methods that help people and organizations achieve their goals. Even though this isn't an in-person event, we still hope that it's a highly interactive one. You can ask direct questions to Crystal using the live chat function, so don't be shy. Ask your questions and we'll address as many as possible. Now let's meet our speaker. Crystal, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Hi, Angela. Thank you. And hello to everybody. It's great to be here today. Well, my life and my career have not been straight lines. They've looked more like this. And if you follow my flight pattern, it might look a little haphazard. I always introduce myself with a 6-word autobiography in the old Hemingway fashion. I find it's easier. You can Google me and find out all sorts of stuff even I don't know. But my 6-word autobiography is I've only ever had one job. Now, if you check my LinkedIn profile and you heard from Angela, I've had a lot of literal jobs. I've done many things, but really whatever I've been doing, I have only been in service to one goal as long as I can remember, and that is I am pretty much a coach. Whether I led teams in a work context, or I'm a mom to my kids, or in my professional life now as an executive coach and a learning facilitator, it's the same job. I help people see the world a little differently and to learn to leverage tools and help each other achieve their goals. And that is goals through and with the use of these tools, but also through and with working with each other. And where this has led me is right here, right now. I'm in a little room in New Jersey. I've been delivering training programs all day today virtually, and I get to be with you all today. And my intent really is just that I hope by the time we're done talking here, that everybody who is on the call today can have one practical thing that they could use to bring them closer to their goals too.
That's fantastic. So when did you kind of start getting into research around work-life balance, and what led you to really be interested in that topic?
So many moons ago, I was working for a global consulting company. I was based in the UK. I was an expatriate. Most of my family was in the US. I had had my first child. I was dealing with some real work-life balance challenges myself. And at that time, I was asked to lead a global initiative to look at workers at the dawn of the new millennium. So a long time ago, taking it back a while. But at the time, everyone was really crazy with what are workers going to want? What's the workplace going to be like? And companies just started to experiment with some of the things that are now commonplace, like flexible working strategies, like having more services be in your business, such as childcare or senior care, or really having employee assistance programs as well. These were all sort of being experimented with at the time. It was before, Google was Google, before Amazon was Amazon. And we were really trying to figure out what it was that people were going to want out of their work and their life together. We surveyed more than 13,000 people across 10 countries, all the way around the civilized workforce at the time. And we found some interesting things. We found that people said, 2/3 of people said that they would trade their salary for a job that allowed them to have a life. People said that they would be willing to switch jobs for one that had more balance. And this really started launching us and me personally into search, really trying to consistently find out what it is about that challenge, the challenge of balancing two things we all love a lot. We love what we do and we love who we are. And how do we bring those two things together so that we feel a certain equilibrium and we wake up every day feeling that we're pointed toward our true north. We're doing what matters to us in a way that is consistent with the person we want to be. So that's how I came to start to work in this space. And then later on, through developing the competency in coaching, through getting those certifications, when I talk to clients, be they life coach clients or executive coach clients, sooner or later, it all came up. It was all about balance. So continue to search tools, methods, and ways to just help people try to achieve that in their day-to-day work.
And so as you were starting to think more deeply about the concept, in today's world, I know there's a lot of articles out there that really kind of pose this question of, is work-life balance even possible? Is it, is it a realistic goal?
Yeah.
And so how do you approach the concept generally?
It's funny you should mention all those articles, because about 3 o'clock today, knowing I was going to come here and talk to you all, I actually got an email newsletter. So I'm on a lot of news groups. This is a topic I keep close to my Google Watch list. And I got a newsletter from somebody I know pretty well, who's been working on research in this area. And his encouragement in his newsletter, they blasted out to his thousands of subscribers, was that we should stop using the word balance. The word itself is our problem. We should think about juggling or blending or segmenting our work and our life instead. And I like reframing a challenge to help solve it. But in this case, the problem might just be the problem. Each of us has a unique agenda of what we're trying to achieve in any given day. And it's negotiating that on a moment-to-moment basis that gets pretty crazy, regardless of whatever we call it. My agenda is not your agenda, so we often come up against that as well. And then on top of whatever we're trying to achieve, there are those supposed tos, right? Those things that everyone else tags, their bags that they want us to carry about what we should do and what we could do and what we're supposed to do. And then there are a finite number of hours in a day. All that's real. So someone telling me in a newsletter that if I stop calling it balance, then I'll feel better about how much it sucks sometimes. It's a little hard to get behind at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. So, so what I've come to realize is that, people will call it different things. And you will meet people who tell you that you can't have it. And people who tell you that, yes, you can have it. And they have a magical formula for achieving it. Ultimately, it's a question we all have to ask ourselves. How do we cram everything that we want to be, do, and have into a finite period of time, whether that's a day, a month, a year, or a lifetime? And so when I'm working with folks, I ask them to just take a step back and to start with a couple of simple things. And there's 3 that's top my list. So the first thing is, you got to define what's important to you. And you got to balance that. So whatever you want to call it, however you want to define it, you got to flip the script. It's got to be about what you want. I'll talk a little bit about each of these, but just to get them all out on the table. Second one is you got to be specific about the that, and you got to get granular, really granular about what it includes and what it doesn't include. And then finally, when you've got that in place, you got to be intentional, and you have to be willing to negotiate. So let me say a little bit about each of those, and you can stop me, interrupt me. If somebody's got a burning question, we can pull it apart. But first, the part about defining what's important to you. We all have things that we want. And this sounds simple, right? We know what we want. We get up every day, we know what we want. But when was the last time you took a step back and thought about what's most important to you? What's not negotiable? What do you have to have in your life every day? Now, if you only want work in life, well, if you have a job and you're breathing, congrats, you've got it, right? Mission accomplished. But most of us want more than a job and to breathe. We want meaning, we have hopes, we have aspirations, we have people we want to spend time with, things we want to accomplish and create, a legacy we want to leave. So we have to be really clear about what's important to us and flip the script a little. What's most important to us is not somebody else's definition. So forget everything you've read, forget everything everyone's told you. Get clear on what's important to you, and you get to define that. Now, if you've defined that, if you know what that is, at least at a big level, got to drill down. You have to get really specific. It's so easy to be vague, right? To say I want work and life balance, but it's hard to be specific about what it means to you and then to personally manage to that. So I have two things I'll share with you here. I have a metaphor and a tool, and I borrowed them both. They're not mine. How I put it together is the magic. I always say I'm only good at one thing. It's recombination, taking things from all different places, putting them together in different ways. So I'm bringing my one skill here. First is the metaphor, and it might be a little hokey, and you might have seen it someplace else. Just bear with me because it does work. The metaphor is the old rocks in the mason jar. And I printed out one of these. I'm sure everybody's seen it. Some debate about where it originated, but near as I can tell, Stephen Covey was the first person to apply it widely, so he gets most of the credit. His premise was that if you started with a mason jar and you filled it with rocks, you could get it reasonably filled, right? And his premise, because he was all about managing time, was that if you just arranged the rocks a little better, boy, you could get more in there, right? That actually misses the mark. What a lot of folks have done with it since is to say the point is the opposite, right? The rocks are the big things. They're the things that matter most to us. But we can fill that jar with a lot more than rocks. We can throw pebbles in there and it's a little more full. Some people go so far as to say, hey, if once I've got it full of rocks and pebbles, can I get some sand in there? Well, sure, I can get sand in there. I've even seen one guy put water in on top of it, right? I can always get more in that jar. It's to change the material, the construct, the way I lay the rocks. But the important thing is actually to take the things out, to think, what are the rocks? What is the stuff that I just can't do without? What's the most important part of it? Most important part to me. What are my rocks? Okay. So if you have that in mind, next thing I thought about was I had a tool I really love. I'm going to flash it up here. You won't be able to see it, but I'll talk about it a little bit. This tool comes from a colleague that we learned a lot from when I was busy getting some certifications at NYU in coaching. It's a colleague named Stephen Clooney, and he has his own learning and development practice as well. And he's an executive coach and continues to teach at NYU. He came up with this model that says that any one of us, this is us in the middle, well, we have a lot of things we're trying to manage simultaneously. We are always trying to achieve, his words, balance across 7 main areas of our whole life, right? So this includes our own well-being, our work, our finances, our relationships, so that's our family piece. It includes a little time for fun, some creativity, some knowledge building, and then your physical environment, where you are, matters a lot. And if you really try to think about it, and your personal and spiritual development is the last one, if you really think about it, anything else you can think of probably falls into one of those 7 buckets, right? So I like the jar, I like Covey's jar. I like the new spin on it. I like Clooney's model because I like to think about what really matters in my world and get down to the basics. The trouble is I couldn't fit all 7 of Clooney's bubbles into Covey's jar, right? I can't get all of those giant rocks into the jar. It's still too much. And I got to figure out what it means to me. I got to ask myself, right? What are the big pieces? Even if I know that, yeah, I want some part of work in there, and I want some part of well-being, and I want some part of relationships. Now I've got to prioritize which relationships. And that's hard, right? Because it might mean that sometimes I've got to be kind of a jerk about other relationships that aren't my rocks. But if I'm going to do service to the ones that are really important, then I've got to do that. I want to also be sure that I've defined what my work is, right? It's not just showing up every day at a job. It's got to have some meaning to me. So I got to be clear about what that meaning is and how I'm going to get it. And what about my well-being? Well, I know personally I'm pretty willing to trade sleep and exercise, maybe more than I should, and it'll probably catch up with me. But it's probably not a rock for me. So, you know, that's really me defining those rocks, what's really whole, which of those things are pebbles, which are rocks, and also being clear on when I'm going to give service to some over the others. So those are two models to get specific. And then once I'm specific, I'm ready for the hard work. And the hard work here is being intentional and being willing to negotiate. Now, intentional means I own my time, all 24 hours of it. And I pay attention to how I spend it. Even when I decide to waste it, playing crosswords with friends or binge watching House of Cards, that's service to my fun rock. And my fun rock needs to rock, at least sometimes, or the rest of it doesn't work. So I'm always conscious of me making a choice to give service to one thing or not another. The other thing you have to do if you're going to do that is you can't let other people rent space in your head because it takes up your time, right? And what does that mean, rent space in your head? Well, it means I'm spending more time thinking about what they think of me, or if I'm doing what they want me to do. You know, people will rent space in your head. Your job, they want you to be productive. They want you thinking about that job all the time, right? But you control it, right? The other thing you can't do is you can't waste reflection time. People say to me all the time, in between work and life and, you know, all these things, I don't have 5 minutes to myself. And I get that. I have felt that way too. I think all of us have. So you have to be really intentional about using that time that you do have, even if it's just 15 minutes in the shower or 5 minutes before you go to bed at night, making sure that you're always reflecting on how you want the next thing to be a little bit better, right? So if it's been a bad week, what's one thing I could do to make next week a little better? Which rocks am I not servicing? Which pebbles got in my way? You just take the time to back up there. So if you're intentional, the next thing is you got to be ready to negotiate. Now, people always say, oh, I'm a terrible negotiator. But this is where the rubber hits the road. Balance is a negotiation. It involves knowing what your bottom line is and also what you're willing to trade. So whether it's two people on a seesaw, am I going to support you or hop up and let you land on your bottom? Or a contract between two parties, there's a give and a take. And on any given day, you might need to trade one thing that you want for something you might want more. So let me just give you an example, right? I'm trading in my life right now a lot of my rocks, maybe some of my fun rocks, maybe some of my well-being rocks for a family rock and for work rock, because I've got 3 boys to put through college, right? So a lot of my time is spent in service to these 2 rocks, and that's okay, because I know that this is the time right now when I'm going to be doing that. And I have a plan for what happens when I can spend a little less time on those trades and allow some more time toward the others. So 3 things: flip the script, define what's important to you, balance that, be specific and granular about what that is, be intentional and willing to negotiate and trade. And if you start in that space, helps you to define what balance is for you and then get you down the road to thinking about how you might achieve it. And I see there's some questions, Angela, that have popped in.
Yes. Well, and you're obviously doing a great job because one of your sons is at UCLA. So you've clearly been that's been a successful endeavor. So a question that we got in our pre-submitted RSVP form, I thought you might be able to really address because you own your own business. And this question came in from Naveed, and he asked about how do you strike a balance when you're the owner of your own business, which means that you might have a flexible work schedule, but you also need to be constantly available to your clients and your staff. How do you approach that?
So I go back to the intentional piece here. I manage my day on a 24-hour clock, right? And if you own your own business, chances are you do too. And the lines between what's work and what's life get pretty blurry. Now, people say, oh, if you love what you do, then work's not work. Yeah, work is work, right? At 10 o'clock at night, it's an email you don't want to send, right? Or having to deal with something. There will be days when you have to do that. But again, what I try to do is I try to be very intentional about that time. I let clients know when I'm reachable and when I'm not. One trick that a colleague told me is always be available, but not necessarily on the first ring or in the first ping, right? So one thing I do is I actually will make sure that I'm answering on my time frame, right? So if it is late at night and the phone rings, I will often let it go to voicemail. Right? Sometimes clients just want to leave you a message. Our mistake is thinking, oh, just because I think it's an emergency at 8 o'clock, they do too. Sometimes that's the only time they have time, and they just really want to leave you a message. So I let them leave it. I listen to it right away. If it's an emergency, I call right back. If they really just want to leave a message, then I haven't wasted their time or my time. So some of it is not putting my own lens on it, not deciding because I would do this, it's an emergency, right? So make sure you're intentional about how you carve out the time. Make sure that, just because it is your business and everything you do, right, is a dollar in or a dollar out, that you still maintain some of those boundaries. Part of the great joy of managing your own business is that 24-hour clock is yours. You don't have to punch a card. People, they might want to know where you are, but they don't need to know where you are. I also really value something I referred to with my colleagues as invisible time, right? This is time where no one knows where you are but you. Your family doesn't know. Your clients don't know. You're not booked for anything. And when you have that time, treasure it. It's a good reflection time. It's a good time to do something that you need to do to rejuvenate your fun muscles. But I make use of those two things. I'm really intentional. I block my time. I take a pause between answering all those urgent email and questions that come off hours. And then I really just try to honor those things in my day-to-day interactions and role model that for other people. If I'm coaching a client and I'm, always on, I'm not really role modeling, helping them get that balance either. Hope that helps a little.
Yeah, I love that. So a question from the live chat from Sandy. She asks, how has your work-life equilibrium changed over the course of your career?
That's a very, very good question. And I think that to be quite honest, when you first start out in your career, you're so used to, I'm ticking boxes, right? I've graduated school. I wanted to get this job. I got this job. I want to do a good job at it. And every company wants nothing more than you to be chained to that desk 24/7. I think one of the things you realize is that you do have more power to negotiate than you think you do. When you first start out in your career, you think you have no power, and maybe you have this much, but you do have this much. And most people will say, well, I can't ask for that. I can't do that. I can't try that. And I was certainly guilty of that early on in my career. What I found out is that if you do a good job, you'd be surprised what you can ask for. You'd be surprised. Now, not you have to do it within the realm of reason, but if what you need is to come in 15 minutes late, right, for something that's important to you, or if what you need is more time for reflection, or even what you need is maybe an extra week vacation, you can ask, right? They can say no, but at least they know your intention and they know what it's for. And also you're being really clear about what you want it for. If you walk in and say, I need an extra week's vacation, right? Well, okay, everybody wants something, needs something. I had a boss who used to tell me, boy, people in hell want ice cubes. Don't mean we're getting them, right? So you have to be, if you're clear also about your intention, look, I really need to try to get an extra week's vacation. Here's what I'm willing to trade for it, right? Maybe I'm willing to, take on an extra project for the 6 months prior. Right? Maybe I'm willing to, stay late the week before to finish a project so that I can get that vacation. And here's what I need it for. Maybe there's something that's really important to you in your personal goals. That's also something that matches up with the organization's goals as well. Maybe you want it to go explore someplace abroad, and bringing back that knowledge alone is going to be valuable to the organization. So you don't have to trade something more traditional. You can say, look, I'm not only going to come back refreshed, but I'm going to come back with this new knowledge, and I'll share it with you all, right? So really thinking about what you want and thinking about where those needs match up, that can be really useful. And it's something I learned later in life that I wish I'd known even when I was 22.
I love that concept of the trades. It's a great framework to think about it. So in line actually with your comments about early on in your career, we got this great question from Alex. And the question was, how should junior level employees manage work-life balance at companies with very demanding hours? So late nights, weekends, when bosses expect them to be at the office or on call, at those times.
So I know that a lot of people will use these words to you, and I never like them being used toward me, but the whole notion of pay your dues, right? Put in the time early. I did that. Right? And I can say that it paid off. You get a little credibility built up. You get a little trust built in the piggy bank with your boss, and that opens up more opportunity for you down the road. But you have to be careful that you don't burn out. I've definitely burnt out of jobs too, doing just that, trying to build the reputation, trying to build the credibility. And so again, I think it goes back to really thinking about what you want time for and what you personally need time for. And then thinking about how you use the time that you do have, right? And also thinking about talking to your bosses about helping them help you prioritize. It's something you don't necessarily know when you're a junior employee. Everything is presented to you as though it is on fire, and it is your job to put it out. So if you need help, that is another big thing, right? We are not superhumans. We do not wear capes, right? I love that little line from Incredibles, not cape. I tell myself that every day. Every day I'm feeling like I'm the only one who can do it. And if I don't do it, this will fall apart. I need to reach out to the people around me. And, if some days that means I need to negotiate with an employer or with a client or with my family or the boss who's, making a demand that's hard for me to meet, I need to let them know, right? I need to say, okay, I want to do all of these things. I want to be a good employee. I want to serve the team. Here's where I'm running into roadblocks. I need some help prioritizing. I need some time to rejuvenate. I have a colleague who, says all the time, she needs 8 hours of sleep. No, full stop, right? We go on these training events where the clock is early to late. And, she says, I don't go to the team dinner because I need to sleep. I need to sleep. So really thinking about, again, what your bottom line is and what you can't do without, and negotiating on that. It helps a bit, particularly when you're junior and you're trying to work it out. Also getting some help from people around you. If you don't have a mentor, get one. And mentor relationships now are not the way they were 20, 30 years ago when I was looking for a mentor, right? Mentor relationships now are really reciprocal. Us old people, we need to learn a lot from everyone else, trust me. And I deliberately, I have a lot of mentor-mentee relationships, and I'm looking to learn as much from whomever I'm mentoring as I hope maybe they learn from me. I think the best mentor relationship we should all aim for is the one between Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. Right? This started fairly early on in Gates' career, and they've been mentors, mentees ever since, and the lines are blurred. They don't know which is which. They help each other out with a lot of things because they just bring different perspective. So if you don't have somebody who brings that perspective to you, whom you can bounce things off of, whom you can say, here's what I'm thinking of negotiating. Can I get some coaching and advice about how I do that? Can I get your perspective on how you would take it if somebody on your team presented it to you? And can you help me frame it in such a way that it makes it easier for my boss to say yes?
That is wonderful advice, and actually, it's something that we're hoping that Bruins will use our online platform UCLA One for reach out to fellow Bruins, maybe in an industry that they're interested in or that they're already working in, and ask those questions, like you said, bounce ideas off and talk about how to make those trades and be intentional about one's priorities. Another great question that we got came in from Caitlin, and she said, what are your suggestions for alleviating the guilt that you may feel when you take time to do things for yourself that you think others may not want you to do?
I come from a long line of relatives who are really good at laying guilt on, so I'm completely in touch with that. I come back to something that a colleague told me pretty early on in your career. If you're not good to yourself, you're good to no one, right? So in the short term, can you help whomever it is by, doing the extra thing or sacrificing something for yourself? Maybe. But in the long term, it's just not sustainable. And we also don't do any of those relationships that are big rocks in our jar any favor if we're not approaching them in an honest way, saying when we can and we can't do something. And again, not carrying your bags for you. I need to let you know, as a really good friend or a colleague, you're asking me to carry that bag. And I can't, because I'm carrying my own. And here's what I can do, and here's when I can help. And here's why I can't today. Now, the first few times you do that, you probably still feel kind of bad about it, right? There's a part of me that always feels a little bad about that. But again, I'm really intentional. I make the person my partner in it. Same thing. I've had to do this with my kids recently, right? I've had to say, I have limited capacity to help with X, because I have to travel and do all of this extra work to pay for those colleges. Right? So we need to prioritize together, right? What's most important right now? I absolutely positively want to be there for that. And what can you take on yourself? Because you're going to have to take more stuff on yourself. What could we enlist the help of somebody else with? Maybe we can bring a third party in here. Maybe it's not just a me-you challenge. Maybe somebody else could get involved. And make them a partner in trying to sort out us both getting what we want. So much of our time we're involved in all these, even work-life balance, right? It's presented like an either or. You need to get some both and thinking in there, right? Yes and. Great tool from improv. Maybe you've seen the YouTube video with Tina Fey talking about it, 2 execs at Google of all people, right? That's really how we approach it. Okay, you want this, I want that. Yes, and how can we manage that? Can I help you? Can you help me? Can we bring somebody else in? How can we achieve it?
I love that approach. Another really wonderful question that we got with our RSVPs, she asked, once you've established yourself as a workaholic, whether it be at a new job or a job that you've been at for a while, how do you ease yourself into working less as you help your team adapt to the change as well? And how do you respond to folks who might react negatively to your choice to have more work-life balance?
So here's the big thing, right? And I'm a recovered workaholic. I guess you stay one. It's always in you. It's a gene that stays with you. The hard thing, really, coming to terms with it in hindsight, was acknowledging that I had come off the bus. Right? I'd come off that, fast, furious, whatever it takes bus, and I was prioritizing other rocks. And I imagined what other people thought. I didn't know, I didn't ask them, and at the end of the day, maybe it didn't matter, but I imagined, right? I imagined what, my alumni group thought. I imagined what the people I'd been fast-tracked with thought. I imagined all the stories that they told, and what are they doing? They're renting space in my head. I'm carrying those bags, right? So the hard thing is to acknowledge that sometimes we're creating some of that. And then if we really do get that sort of feedback, or, and you get feedback from the universe every day with, oh, you're doing that now. Or, I used to get, 6:30, half day, right? What do we do with that? Instead of, feeling bad about it or letting it slide, say, hey, a work day officially ended at 5. It's kind of a long day for me, right? I don't know what you're still doing here, but I'm getting more efficient in the way I do my work. I'm out, right? But we have to get comfortable with how we feel about it first, and not wear the supposed tos and the judgment of the other people on our back, even if they're there. And really think about if something is really, if you're really feeling that from somebody, I always use inquiry. You know, has me doing this had an impact on you? Has me doing this made more work for you? Because I don't want to do that. And again, let's partner together. Let's not either or. Either I'm happy, you're sad. Let's find a way to make it work for both of us.
I really like that, separating your own expectations from yourself and maybe what is other people's expectations or judgments. Another great question we got that was submitted was from Annie, and she said, how would you suggest working with human resources to help navigate ways to take care of ourselves during times when we're maybe feeling burnt out?
Yeah, the great thing now is that there are so many programs in place and there's tools you can use. One of the things I hear from human resource professionals that I do work with is that they're really underutilized. That companies make many of these options available to you, and people don't come and ask. So I can assure you that they want you to come, they want you to ask them. So that's the first step. Really, as you know, if you're feeling pressure or you're feeling that you know there's a program or a tool in place, but you don't know how to go about doing it, reach out to your human resources department. That's what they're there. Chances are they've been waiting for you to come and ask about it. Also, leverage people in your own group or system whom you know have taken advantage of that. If you're not really sure where to start, if you do know somebody who's already been down that road, whether it's your company or another company, it's good to reach out, find out their experience, find out the pitfalls, what worked, what didn't work, so that you can gain the benefit of their experience and make it work for you. But the one thing you don't want to do for sure is to read about it and not ask about it. A lot of us do that. Boy, that sounds great. My boss won't allow it. Boy, that sounds great. It won't work in my department. Make human resources your partner and help have them work toward that yes and solution with you.
That's a great approach of working with them and letting them help you and guide you. A question that we got in a couple different forums that I thought was really interesting, Pat submitted, and they said, how do you achieve balance as a full-time single parent?
Gosh. So, one of the things I always say to people is if we were in the zombie apocalypse, right, we wouldn't be talking about work-life balance. We'd only be talking about surviving. And there are times in your life where you're sort of close to that zombie apocalypse. You are in survival mode. My mom was a single mom in her early 20s with 2 small kids, full-time job, no college degree. There were only 2 rocks in her jar, and 3 is my brother and I, and this job she had to have so that we could eat and stay in our house. And the thing that I think has helped in reflection, thinking about that time, thinking about what my mom was going through, and how as a kid we were pretty acutely aware of what that was like. And in retrospect, as a parent myself, knowing now more what it really must have felt like, the one thing I can say that my mom always did, and that again I try to bring into my world, is the part about being intentional and finding if it's only 15 minutes a day to start to plan your way forward, right? So my mom knew that it would eventually get better in a couple of ways. One, eventually we'd both get to school, right? So then she could expand her hours at work, and then maybe even afford a babysitter so she could go get her college degree, right? So she had another rock. It's education. Meant a little less rock time for some of the other things. But she started to plan forward. What that taught me as a kid was to dream. Certainly taught me to be intentional. It's what I've been trying to do ever since. It also taught me to plan for tomorrow. What happens to so many people is they get really bogged down in the now. And then when things do start to get even a little bit better, they don't know where to go. Because all they've been doing for so long is putting one foot in front of the other. And that's all they can do. So even if all you can carve out, is 5 minutes in the car, 10 minutes in the shower, just think about not boiling that ocean, right? Not necessarily even getting from big here to big there, but one way to start moving things forward. And that's a lesson I learned from my mom in that space, and I hope it's useful to you.
Definitely. A great question we got was from Deborah, and she said, I'm a social worker and passionate about my work in social change. I find that when you're passionate about your career, it's especially challenging to balance work and life. What tips do you have?
Again, I'm going to pass along a little advice from a colleague of mine. I love my work. She loved hers. And, she sometimes found it hard when she was hanging out with people who would say things that sounded well-meaning but felt a little passive-aggressive, like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do all that work and have time for a family, which, maybe she carried the bags, but she thought was insinuating the fact that she shouldn't spend so much time at the office, even though she loved it. And she actually talked to her family about it, even talked to her young son, who at the time was only 10 years old. And one of the things he told her that I'll never forget is he said, I love that you work because you go cool places and you do cool things. And then when you come home, we talk about it. I talk to you about the cool stuff I learned. You talk to me about the cool stuff you've learned. And we have so much more to think about and to plan for. And I try to bring that advice to bear with respect to my own kids and my own relationships. If I'm doing what I love, then I bring that back to our relationship. And I always say, I even say to my kids now that they're older, if you really don't want to be here, there's some family events that are non-negotiable, right? Grandma's in the hospital, we're going, right? Big things, big important things. But I let others be negotiable. If you don't want to be here, don't be here, because then you're not here. You're gone, and your body's here. And that's not good for me, and it's not good for you. So if you really, really need to be someplace else to feel fulfilled, if your work gets you jazzed and makes you excited, it makes you a better friend, makes you a better parent, makes you a better colleague, makes you a better you, then let people know that. It's not that they're not important to you. It's that the way to be the best you with them is in service to what you love. Hard to do sometimes, but that's the best way I know how.
I love that. Thinking about the family piece, Rod sent us a question. He asked, how do you achieve work-life balance when the company expects and demands your time over being with your family? In fact, when the company expects you to sacrifice your family time over servicing the company?
Yeah, so I don't blame companies, right? What company's number one goal is? Company's number one goal is to make money, achieve objectives, get the most out of you as humanly possible for the least amount of money. That is their agenda, and good to them, right? That's what they do. Your agenda is probably a little different. So this is where the negotiation takes place, right? I always think about a negotiation as two circles. One is what one person wants, the other is what the other person wants. And then where is the part, even if it's only a tiny bit, that they converge? That's the negotiating space, right? That's the common ground. So they want you to be productive. I'm not productive 24 hours, 24/7 chained to my desk. I'm sure you're not either, right? So you need to have that kind of conversation. I want to be as productive as possible. I won't be productive if I don't get some time off. This is also about understanding on a day, weekly basis, what's non-negotiable for you, right? If a non-negotiable is, for my family, it's really important to me that, that I have an hour on Friday or off early to attend something, to attend an activity. And that's non-negotiable. I have to have that. Well, again, then I need to think about what I might be willing to trade. Would I be willing to trade, as terrible as it sounds, maybe coming in for a couple of hours on Saturday or coming in early on Friday to get that hour back? You might, I always start with the, look, this is what's going on in my life right now. I really appreciate if every other Friday I could leave at 4. And they can say, no, I can't really spare you at 4. What would other people think? Whatever excuse, because their job is maximum productivity. Okay, how about this? I really need that hour. It's pretty non-negotiable for me. What if I came in early? What if I came in on Saturday? What if I came back after, if I'm going to do something? What if I came back after? Whatever it is, find out what it is and figure out what you would be willing to trade so that you can have that item. Now, again, if you are in just a job that you've tried all these things, they can still say no. That's what happens in any negotiation. Then you need to go back to that list. And I always say to people, you have to also be really honest about what my stated commitments are and what my hidden commitments might be. And maybe if you find you're not able to trade and negotiate, maybe you might have a few hidden commitments in there. So example, I don't know about you, but I'd be willing to bet there are at least a fair portion of people on the call who at one time or another have tried to lose some weight. That is my stated goal. I make a New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose some weight. That is my stated commitment. Now, what happens? I know it happens to me. I travel a lot for work. And when I travel, boy, I like to eat out with my colleagues, my clients. I love eating out with them. It's a communal experience. It's the way that I find out what's really going on. It's fun. We usually go to nice places, and I love great food. So, I say, all right, well, during the week, if I'm traveling, I'm just going to eat what I want. And when I get home on the weekend, I miss my family, and I'm half Sicilian, so food and family is what it's all about. And I want to eat carbs. I like bread and pasta, and I don't want to sacrifice because I'm excited to be with my family. So I eat the bread and the carbs, and my diet is out the window, and I don't lose 5 pounds, probably gain 10. My hidden commitments are much stronger than my stated commitments. My big rocks are my family, my friends, my work. Losing weight, that well-being, it's pretty much a pebble for me. Right? Might not be for you, but it kind of is for me. And so my hidden commitments get in the way of me really coming to that negotiation full bore. Right? Chances are, if you are a really good worker and you do great work, they want to keep you.
Exactly.
They might be willing to trade.
Yeah, I love that framework because it sounds like you go to HR or your boss or talking to a manager, and instead of saying I'm burnt out, give specifics for what would help you and what would make a difference, instead of just a blanket statement that isn't actually communicating what you need. So I love these tools and tips.
By the way, I do want to credit that hidden commitments thing to a fantastic Harvard Business School professor, and sorry to give a plug to another school, but that hidden commitments thing comes from a fantastic professor named Ron J. Galati. And if you are interested in that space and you Google him, you can find a little bit more about that.
Oh, great. So as we wrap up, what would you say are the top 3 things that you want Bruins to take away from tonight's discussion?
Top 3 things. Well, first, flip the script. Your definition of balance, no one else's, right? You decide. Second thing is to really be sure that you have defined what that is in your balance equation. There's no way to balance if you're all over the place. Doesn't work. It's like a seesaw, teeter-totter, all over the place if we're not clear. So be really clear. Be clear with yourself. That means being honest about those hidden commitments. That means, reaching out to other people, get them to call you on that, right? Make sure you have mentors, friends, colleagues who can say, boy, you say this, but your actions tell me that. Get really clear about what those rocks are. And the last thing is be intentional. That 24-hour time clock is yours. Take out sleeping and eating. Yeah, it takes a lot of space out, but you own that time. You own all the choices you make in that space. And even if you think you're a terrible negotiator, right? Maybe you're right, but you have been negotiating like this your whole life, ever since you were a little kid, and you went, pick me up. You know how to do this. You know how to do this. Negotiated to get picked up. You negotiated to get to be a Bruin. You negotiated to get a job. You negotiate minute to minute every day to get what you want. So if you're clear on what that is, it's a lot harder to find the space to trade and to find it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Crystal, for your insights about work-life balance and really how to find your own equilibrium in this space. And to everyone who's watching, thank you again for joining us and participating in the discussion. If you missed a portion of tonight's event or you'd like to share it with others, you can find the recording on the UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. Also, we'd love your thoughts and ideas for upcoming topics. So send us an email at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu and let us know what you want to hear about. Thank you to Crystal and to everyone for being a part of tonight's event. And thank you again to our Blue, Gold, and Life members. Events like Bruin Career Insights are powered by membership. Through your support, we're able to provide career resources for all Bruins. We'll see you again on November 16th for our next episode in the Bruin Career Insights, focused on adapting to change. Have a great evening and go Bruins.